regarding the same. Amid Prime Minister Modi's historic Sri Lanka visit, Sri Lanka has now released 14 fishermen as a special gesture during this visit. Now, the government data over the past decades says, which is based on the responses in Parliament, it shows that in 2024, the number of Indian fishermen arrested in Sri Lanka crossed the 500 mark for the first time in 10 years. It has been an ongoing row. However, this gesture comes as a major breakthrough in the efforts to resolve India-Sri Lanka fisheries disputes. CNN News 18 Siddhant Mishra joins me on the broadcast. Siddhant, with the arrest of over 500 Indian fishermen in 2024 alone, could this gesture be read as Sri Lanka's way of trying to ease the ongoing tensions, the ongoing disputes, fishery disputes?
Well, look, what happens in the deep sea, perhaps the detention of Indian fishermen, the arrest of Indian fishermen, because according to Sri Lankan side, they cross over into the Sri Lankan territory, Sri Lankan waters, and perhaps the action needs to be taken against them, etc., etc. But whenever there is a demand from the Indian government, at least in the last 1 decade, whenever there is a demand that has come from the Indian government to release those fishermen, perhaps Sri Lanka has promptly acted upon the demand of the Indian side. In fact, a few months back also, there was an incident in the deep sea, and right after India's intervention, the Indian embassy had sent staff to the hospital, and all of them were brought back to the India successfully in less than 48 hours. So, Prime Minister Modi, in fact, yesterday had again reiterated India's position that India wants Sri Lanka to deal with the issue of fishermen with a humanitarian view. Perhaps that's the official line of the Indian government, and the same was reiterated by Prime Minister Modi yesterday during the joint statement with President Dissanayake. And now we're getting to know that Sri Lanka has released 14 Indian fishermen, perhaps as a goodwill gesture for to celebrate the visit of Prime Minister Modi to Sri Lanka. Perhaps a big decision by the Sri Lankan government. In fact, a short while back, I was speaking to the Deputy Foreign Minister of Sri Lanka. In fact, he told us that when AKD came to power, there were a lot of doubts about how he will carry forward the old relationship with India. But perhaps now, during this particular visit, the kind of bonhomie that both leaders have developed, AKD and Prime Minister Modi, they were together in a car to Anuradhapura. They visited Bodhi temple along together. Perhaps signifies the personal rapport that both leaders have developed now. And as a result of that, 14 Indian fishermen, as a special gesture, have been released by the Sri Lankan side.
Right.
The last hour. Anything can happen between the bells. But what happens during the last hour is what matters the most. The biggest market swings. A close-up look at what's driving them. And how the investors are reacting. Watch the most seasoned market mavens guide you through the most important hour of the trading day. NSE Closing Bell. At these times, only on CNBC TV 18 and CNBCTV18.com.
For more news and updates, all you need to do is follow CNBC TV 18 on all of our digital platforms.